You are listening to the Special Needs Children podcast with Chitra Iyer. Chitra Iyer is a parent of 23-year-old Shravan Iyer who has epilepsy, cerebral palsy and autism. She is the CEO of MFA and has been helping families with life-centered planning to reach their personal financial goals. She is also a trustee of a parent support group, the Forum for Autism, which was set up almost 2 decades ago. MFA is a 17-year-old organization working in the personal finance space. They have set up a dedicated practice to help families with special needs children to plan their financial goals and invest for them. The thoughts shared here are as a result of discussions with parents, caregivers, siblings, and professionals regarding the planning of a person with special needs. They have set up a dedicated practice to help families with special needs children to plan their financial goals and invest for the same. The thoughts shared here are as a result of discussions with parents, caregivers, siblings, and professionals regarding the planning of a person with special needs. In this expert series podcast, Chitra is talking to Miss Indrani Basu, mother to Amitava and Kav. Both are autistic. She is the founder of Autism Society West Bengal, ASW, in Kolkata.
Hello everyone. A big warm welcome to all of you on this expert series of my podcast for special needs children. Hi Indrani.
Hi, Chitra.
Hi. So happy to connect with you after so many years of knowing you, getting this opportunity to actually understand your entire journey, listen to it, and learn from it. So I'm really, really thankful to you for agreeing to give me your time and sharing your wisdom through this interview with me.
Thank you for inviting me. So happy to connect with you again.
Thank you. So I'll just do a quick introduction to our listeners about you, Indrani. Indrani Basu is my special guest today for our podcast, and she belongs to Kolkata. Having graduated in education and completing her B.Ed from a university in London, she loved to teach. And while working at a mainstream school in India, she realized that both her sons, Amitava and Kav, were diagnosed in the Autism Spectrum Disorder. After the diagnosis, she trained as a special educator, specializing in autism, and she went on to set up the foundation for Autism Society West Bengal in Kolkata. Autism Society West Bengal was registered as a society on 30th December 2002. Initially, ASWB started as a parent support group with just an evening play group. Indrani and a couple of the other core group mothers started with getting the children together in the evening and conducting sessions for them, where she started with sessions for her younger son. Soon they saw that the number of families started growing and a lot of other people wanted to join in the play group. And they believed and started working on a purely communication-based intervention program. As much as possible, she tried accommodating the one-to-one sessions, and once they realized that there was a lack of trained resources, and it was becoming very difficult to accommodate all those who were coming in. In June 2003, Autism Society West Bengal started Dikshan. Dikshan uses verbal behavior analysis and structure as a mode of teaching and management. Indrani has special interest in Asperger's syndrome since her elder son, Amitava, has Asperger's syndrome. She's a resource person for a number of other organizations in India, and she also conducts workshops for various organizations in and outside Kolkata. I have been fortunate to listen to Indrani around 15 years ago as part of Forum for Autism. And what a wealth of learning it was at that time when my son was so young. Thank you, Indrani. Beginning with my first question coming to you, can you please share your journey of living with autism with your children, please?
When my eldest son was I'm about 2, 3, I was beginning to notice that he was a little different. And but he could speak before he could walk. There were a lot of things he could do that other kids couldn't do. So I remember that I never had to toilet train him or anything. Even when regular kids of my friends, they were still bedwetting or whatever, they were in diapers. He wasn't. He was totally toilet trained. He was very, very independent at a very early age. So I don't think there was anything in that way wrong. But there was definitely certain oddities. Especially, I think what really struck me was that he didn't play like other children. He used to line up toys. They would go out to play because we didn't live in Calcutta. We used to live a little outside Calcutta. There's a lot of open spaces and gardens and so on. So he would go to a garden and he'd drift off into a corner. He was not really playing in the group. So I used to wonder about that. He did a lot of running off onto the main road and all this. But since we were kind of out in the country, it was like, okay, manageable. And this went on, like he was having problems in school. But even the problems in school were very strange. Like sometimes he'd do very well in certain studies, and then next day he'd come with this blank copy, exercise book. So it was very strange. It was just something I didn't understand. But it went on and on. Then by that time, my second child was born, and I noticed that his motor, milestones were on time. In fact, he learned to walk quite fast. He stood up and learned to walk. So I thought, okay, this is okay. But he had speech delay. He had very few words. So this went on, but we were still struggling with Amitava. We were thinking, well, there is something wrong here. So because my only experience is of being a parent of the Amma boys. So we went off and had them seen, and there were a lot of, at that time, in the 1990s, I think it was very difficult to get someone who really understood autism, the whole spectrum. So their idea of autism is a very specific kind of person. And even I have my doubt that such a person exists, but it was always seen as someone who is, can't really do anything. So because they had speech, although the younger one had very little speech, and there were a lot of things they could do, yet there were a lot of things they couldn't do. And so there were a lot of running around from doctors. And finally, I was reading a lot. At that time, the net was not there, but books and whatever I could get hold of. And a lot of things, actually, I was kind of thinking autism because I had heard that word before. So I was thinking, is it autism? Because it seems to match with that. Whenever I told doctors and professionals, of course, they were very angry and said, if you know so much, then why have you come to me? At that time, it was a lot of, like in the late 1990s. Finally, when they did get the diagnosis, we were, strangely enough, it was for Amitava, we had gone. And when he was asking me, the doctor was asking me questions like, does he have an obsession with spinning? Does he look at the fan? It was matching my younger son, Costa. So he said, it's not really going with what he has, but it is what the younger one does. So he said, well, I better see both the boys. So eventually we got both the boys were diagnosed with autism. I was very shaken. Both of us were like totally shaken by this, but in some ways I was relieved that I knew a name, that it had a name. It had this, whatever they have, there's a name to it. There is a kind of a system to it. So therefore there must be some way of managing it. I must say that initially where I was referred, I found a lot of unethical practices and I was not happy about it. And it was like when I came back and then I left my job. I was a teacher and I left my job. I relocated to Calcutta because we were living outside. My husband was still outside Calcutta. And we started looking for options, like where do they go? What kind of help do they need? But there wasn't anything really. At that time in Calcutta, what was there was lots and lots of unethical practices going on. And I thought, I can't go through this. Why should a child cry? Why should a person, child have to suffer such a lot of humiliation in the name of therapy. But at that time, I thought that it was really, I couldn't understand that how anyone can justify things like tying up a child's hands, locking him up, putting up on a high chair, restricting him. It just did not fit with me. So the younger one, whatever therapy he was in, I took him out. And Amitava there was no services for him. Wherever I went, he said, no. He can do so much. It can't be, it can't be, we can't accommodate him. So anyway, finally we started. I got trained. At that time, there wasn't really a proper course for autism. We just started with this play group, and we used to, whatever I had learned, I was kind of implementing. And from then we started slowly building it up, and we started the school. Then we started doing things like parent training. Then we got various kind of programs started adding, because parents started coming with different needs. Parents were coming with all kinds of different needs. And at that time, Calcutta didn't have much of autism specific kind of services. And even if it said that it was about autism, again, you had this very restricted idea about what autism was. It was always, they are violent. It was always, they didn't speak. They had no communication. They were they didn't understand anything. They didn't think. They didn't have emotions. It just didn't match with what I saw. So then we began to grow, and we started parent training, because I was for a while at Action for Autism. So I had observed Mary at AFA, and so in the same way we started setting up a parent training group here. We got various people to come and train, and getting trained people was a big thing, because there was no training course at that time that was the government recognized. Even autism was not even recognized as a condition. So it went on like that. So then different parts of the organizations sort of kind of grew with the need of people who came to us. So as the kids who came into diction, they grew up, we realized we needed a vocational unit. So we started with that. Parent training, we started. Then, like now, we branched into so many things. A lot of kids, especially the milder end of the spectrum, need something a little different. So we started school readiness program. Then we realized that there was no space for where they could interact, friendship. So we started a social club called YAR, where regular people and people with autism, adults or teenagers, can interact. So it's been growing on from there. But the more we see that the needs are so varied. I think what all people with autism want is acceptance and accommodation. They want to be understood and accepted. And I think, after so many years in this field and knowing so many people with autism, I think it doesn't matter whether they can speak or they can't speak, or they partially speak, or they're very educated or they're not. For them, that need to be accepted, to be accommodated, is the same right across the spectrum. And they understand rejection. I think that's the one thing that I realized, that it doesn't matter where they are on the spectrum, when they're rejected, they very much understand it. And that lot of the things that we just associate with autism is not under the control of that person. How they react to certain, let's say, certain turmoils in the life, and that really it hit home during the lockdown. Is that the trauma that was created during that period, and how a lot of people on the spectrum just had a lot of issues, and autism is seen like it's seen like a disease. It's seen like, okay, you've got autism, and then everything that goes wrong in your life is associated with autism. Even for the parents, like parents can be depressed irrespective of their child's autism. Parents can have a problem irrespective of the child's autism. Same with a person with autism. It isn't just because of the autism. So like, it's one of the times I realized that in my younger son, who's now an adult, that he was in depression. All the behaviors were due to a mental health issue, which was like, it was so difficult to explain to the doctor that, look, this is not like a behavior problem. And I don't think a behavior problem exists. I don't think so. There are difficulties where, because a person with autism is thinking in one way and the rest of the family is thinking in another way, there is this kind of disagreement. But what was my co-star was going through was like a depression, because all the things that he enjoyed and loved, he didn't want. He didn't want to do a lot of things that he enjoyed. The usual things he just let go of. He became very aggressive. He used to become, he didn't hit people, but he used to hand clap, like in a very violent way. And I knew that this cannot be called a behavior problem. I think that was my biggest learning. And that's why, as an organization now, we're kind of stepping into the realms of mental health for people with disability. But again, there is a lack of manpower and expertise, because the experts I talk to, even they say, yeah, we're still learning about it. So by the time they learn, I don't know where these young people will be. And so we're just getting into that. But still now, I think that all these years, there's still a lack of this acceptance. If you have a child or an adult son or daughter with autism, and they get, like we had this in the COVID period, if they got COVID, the difficulty of hospitalization, like there was like
Huge.
Huge. And then finally, I think one of the things that COVID did, it forced a lot of hospitals to take individuals with autism, because there was no other way. A lot of support system had to be thought of. So parents had to hang around nearby, or parents and siblings and so on. And a lot of things, I think there was a big learning for some of the healthcare workers, but I don't think they've learned enough. But in all areas, still, there is so little acceptance. But there are also areas where you didn't think there will be acceptance, especially when it pays that organization. If you look at places like malls and restaurants, where you're paying, they're happy to accept autism. It's no issue at all. You can have someone come in. My younger son goes in and he loves malls. So when he gets in there, he starts rocking happily. Nobody bats an eyelid. Nobody. So it can be done. It can be done. But I would like to see it done right across all the different parts of our society. And then, these things, like organizations like us would not be needed. A lot of people say things like that. Oh, you mustn't have special schools. You mustn't have homes. You mustn't have this. But these are there because that acceptance is not there in society. If that acceptance is there, why should we work so hard in creating these services and so on? Because it will be not needed. If all children with autism can be accommodated in mainstream schools, and they could provide that support system, which does only requires a change of attitude, then why have special schools? So, that is kind of where I am at now in terms of my understanding of autism, and how yet still we have not come up to giving them that support system that society hasn't. So I think we're still a long way off, and we might even be going backwards with some of the stuff that's going on now.
True, very true. So, my follow-up question is that at ASWB, therefore, what's happening there in terms of the future of the center of the organization, and what are your specific future plans?
One of the things that we didn't want to become is like a huge school. So our regular school is very much within the norms of the RCI, because we run a teacher training course. So they have I think 70 or something like that. So we keep it to that. But we don't go beyond that, because I think that we don't want to become just a school. But our future plans are, one is that there has to be some way these individuals can be engaged. They may not be earning big time, and I don't know the recent things with getting jobs, in the open market, and or some of the corporates coming, and very few corporates are coming forward and employing them. And it would be nice that if they can employ more and more. But how far that will go, I don't know, because again, the COVID situation taught us that when emergency comes, usually people with disabilities don't get the jobs or whatever. But definitely they can be, I think all, irrespective of their level, they can be taught to be engaged, to be involved in something. Because one of the things that I've noticed, because my elder son works in my organization, but the unit that he works on, that becomes his kind of group, so they can go out for a little, maybe something, or they wish each other on their birthday. Sometimes they give each other snacks, but within that group only, So I think they all need that. They need that group. They need, okay, I belong to this group. I do this kind of work here. They need to learn a skill, even if it doesn't provide money, but it provides, or very little money, but it provides engagement, passion, connection with other people, and hopefully some earning. So that is something we realize. So we are moving towards setting up a job skill unit. So we've started with that. We've already set up a printing studio. Then we're setting up a very small bakery. We started computer labs and stuff like that. So we'll be doing more and more working on this. That is developing skills, especially those who did not finish their education, their formal education. We're looking at that group. We're also looking at that group who did finish their formal education, but just lack of soft skills, they're not able to get a job. And some of them are working way below their qualification. So we're trying to set up something for them. And of course, we're looking at the future. So we have purchased. Nobody gave it to us, although we asked, but nobody, like the government or anybody, nobody gave it to us. We had to purchase a land nearby, where we hope to set up a training center which would train people for skills and residents. But at the same time, this is something that we're also thinking, that how many people can you accommodate in a home? Like, how many homes can you build? Because they're difficult enough as it is. There's lots of parts to it, the legal part of it. So we have to think, how can you support people? Those who can, there are a lot of people on the spectrum who can do many day-to-day things. They don't need to live in a home. So how about supporting them? We're looking at that also, that how we can support them, and setting up a system where the organization has some way of helping them and supporting them, and letting them know that we are there to help. So if there's any issues, you can come back to us. And so again, there's this question of manpower. Training people, it's not like special education. You need people who know how to support, how to, to help them in the community, to troubleshoot the problems that they're having. So all of this is in the process. Setting up the residence is in the process. And where we're at, there's lots of apartments coming up. So there are some parents who are thinking, okay, what if I buy an apartment? Is there some way that the organization can help us? But what we have moved away from, and I think moved away from it from a long time ago, is setting up a home, and that's it. You stay in the home, and you kind of have nothing to do with the community. We're thinking in a different way. We're thinking of residents, okay, I'll give an example of myself. Like, I know Costa will need a lot of support because he needs, but Amitava doesn't. He needs lots of social support. So we have an apartment near the residence where we're going to eventually set up a residence. Is it possible for him to live in that after us, where he can go in for work and come back, because it's in a complex and people sort of are getting to know him? So is it a possibility that he can live his life like that? Because that would be something his preference. So we're looking at that. We're looking at what do people with what kind of support they need. I am doubtful that the people that I know with autism, they can live totally 100% without support. One of the areas where they do need support is in understanding finances and handling it. I've met so many people who are on the milder end of the spectrum. They can do so much, but knowing when to save, what to save, where to invest, how to spend is something that requires a lot of thinking, a lot of thinking ahead. So this is an area that they need support. They need support, maybe also in deciding their health, like when do I consult a doctor, who do I see. These are what I'm talking about, people who are on the minor spectrum.
Right.
Just because I've got a university degree does not mean that I can handle everything. I can't. I know someone, like for instance, he's a postgraduate, but the parents' problem is that he goes out and spends everything. He just goes out and he'll take his credit card and he'll just spend. So managing his salary, doing all these things, and these are areas where advice is needed for this.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Right.
this is something we're also looking at. So health, property, some of them own property. How will they handle that? So all these areas we are looking at and thinking about. So we know that the care of adults with autism is going to be varied. It's not going to be like like one system fit all. It's never going to be like that. So this is something that we are now slowly developing and working on. It's certainly different from when we started. We thought of, okay, let's set up a home where we can all live together. We even thought of good parents and the kids live together. But then the few examples I've seen, it's not gone too well. And so I don't know. I'm not too keen on that, but I do think that parents can live nearby. They can be involved in their children's lives. The children, if you're adults, they can stay involved with their parents' lives. But I don't know whether living together in the same premises is a good idea in the long run. So we were thinking of that initially, but I think what happens is that groups form, within that community. You get a little group coming up of a couple of parents who become a little too powerful. If it's a good group, it works. If it's a group that's not too, doesn't include everybody, then it doesn't work. And it doesn't follow that just because parents have kids with disability that they think in an inclusive way. Not everyone does. They are mostly focused on their own child and maybe their friend's child. So, parents are like anybody else in society. They've come from society. You become accepting because you have a child with autism or a child with disability. So that is why we are not thinking of parents living with the children. We're thinking of children living in small, like apartments, which is in the same block, but it is totally on our land. And they can live nearby. They can stay and come and visit. The kids can go and visit, and possibly some apartments can be taken nearby, and then the support system can be worked out. But this whole area of adults care, sort of like for their whole life, is, I think, in India it's still being thought about, because comparing it with the US or Europe, where there are social services, doesn't work. You have to think in the Indian context. You have to think what works. So that's something that we are now looking at. That how do we set up support systems? How do we set up people who are going to support? That's another area too that we're looking at.
Another very unique, uh, you know, circumstance for you is having two children on the spectrum. So, when we interact with families who have two children, I always wonder, how do the children, adjust, and how do they vie for your attention, and how do you handle it?
Uh, yeah, it's now actually, see, I think that a lot of parents make the mistake that, I have a kid with autism and he's going to be like this for the rest of his life. No, he's not. He's going to, his wants and needs will change. And having two sons with autism, their wants and needs are different. But sometimes there's a clash. This one wants something and that one wants something. So there's a bit of a clash. But they also have their very strange way of getting on. They have little exchanges. I think when one, especially the younger one, gets angry, he knows that if I say these words to he says these words to his elder brother, he will respond in a certain way. So have this to and fro exchange that calms him down. So they know each other very well. So if the younger one is not doing what the older one is saying, he knows what threats, because obviously he's going to use threats. He's his brother. I may not use threats, but he will use his brother. So, if you don't do this, then I won't do that for you. This kind of thing. What it does is, obviously you double the parenting. You have to think of your finances also, because everything is kind of doubled now. Again, their needs are so diverse because they're two very different people, and that's something you have to realize. And that's why I said, like beyond us, what might work for Kostav may not work for Amitava, and what works for Amitava may not work for Kostav.
True.
So we have to think in that way. You cannot just lump them together, unless, of course, they're very similar. I do know parents who have two kids with autism, and they're very, very similar. There's hardly much difference. But with mine, there's a big difference in their likes, dislike, attitude, in their communication, in many, many things, in their skills. So, how do I balance it? Yeah, you also have to think about what the relationship is going to be like for them in the future. Like, how can they still remain siblings and still get to meet and kind of have a sibling time? How do they do that? I think the one of the things I didn't like was, like, a lot of times when we were talking about the future, the residence, there was an idea that the elder one is going to look after the younger one. I said, no, he may not want to. And why should he? If he's staying in a residence, services that he's supposed to get, he will get the younger one. And also things like there's an assumption that the younger one should be handling everything for them. The older one should be handling everything for the younger one. Again, no, he's not the professional here. He's just the elder brother. He should be allowed to be a brother. They should both be allowed to be brothers rather than anything else.
True.
So that is something that I'm aware of, and I'm very much aware that they're very different from each other and they have very different needs. They do help each other out sometimes, but like this thing, like here, the autism cannot come. You cannot think about autism. You got to think about that they're brothers. So he may not choose to help the other one may not choose to help him. They may decide to choose something. So that has to be kind of understood and respected.
Yeah, understood.
And carried on, because obviously they are family, so they should be able to get their family ties.
What about other people in the family, Indrani? Have they been involved in this entire process?
When I set up the organization, I got a lot of help from my husband's elder brother-in-law, and he gave me the space where I could start. So, because we live in a big house, so there was a couple of rooms downstairs which they were not utilizing. So they said, you can do it, you can start there. And we started there. So that was there. They both have cousins. One of them is not here, is living abroad. One of the cousins is living in India, in Kolkata. And practically that was in our earlier house. And they were living practically next door to us. And they're very much involved. Like, she was very much involved. But at the same time, because she has a life, I don't expect her to be in the nitty-gritty of everything. But yes, I do want her to get involved, possibly in the trust. And this was something we've talked to her about, that we want to set up for the boys, that care, I mean. But I don't want to just have trustees who are friends or relatives. So we're thinking like this: a relative, a parent in the organization that I know very well, and the organization. So we're thinking of the three together.
Okay.
The hands-on care will be given by the organization, but the finances and everything else will be handled by all the three. So we're kind of moving that way into setting up the private trust for the boys. So, but we're still trying to. I would like for instance, our niece to know what I have kind of made it very clear, very sort of like talk to her, and things like being involved socially in their lives, like Rakhi is not so much a big deal in Kolkata, but the Bhaiya Dojes. And there are lots of other events like their birthdays, and just remembering them, calling them up, if it's possible, coming over. So this kind of thing is what I would like for them to get involved in. And she is a very aware person. But then again, you've got to keep things in mind. We don't know how the people were thinking of how their lives might be. So to think about when your trustee, for whatever reason, can't carry on, what do you set up then? What is the next line? I mean, what I wouldn't like is the trustees suddenly becoming very silent and not being there. So there must be a way that if they can't manage, is there some way that they can arrange for somebody else who has that personal touch? But I don't. What worries me is that nobody. You know how things sometimes just becomes silent. Nobody bothers. That is bad. I think what we have to talk about is that if I can't handle it, then somebody else has to come in to step in or something. So we're looking at that now. So that's and that's something we're also discussing with the organization. We're talking to parents, pretty early on, but very young kids, parents of very young kids don't want to think about it. But they do realize that possibly a support will be needed. So we talk about keeping their extended family members as a support. We talk about friends and their children as support. We talk about joining a parent organization, not necessarily us, wherever they live, finding a parent organization nearby and joining that. We talk about that. And I also make sure I make it very clear that in our country, things are not going to be handed to you as a matter of rule. Like we don't have a social service system. So you cannot say, I need these services, I need this support system, I won't turn up. You can join an organization, but you have to work with that organization to create the support. And that's the way things are. There's nothing else in India, despite all the rules and so on. So you have to work with that organization and create the support system for your child, working with other parents.
So, in continuity to this only, I wanted to actually ask you that, how have you ensured that your child is taken care of, for the rest of his lifetime financially? Do you feel that you're sorted enough? And how do you talk about this even in your group? And did you guide your, the other parents and their siblings, extended, whoever is there, all of them around us, how do you talk to people about what they need to do about money?
Mm-hmm. Well, for us, basically, what we have done is made a will, but we have to do a little bit more because a lot of our money is kind of not a lot, but some of our money is kind of tied up in property. So that has to be taken care of. That has to now be sold or whatever and taken. I'm thinking of everything we have. Literally, my jewelry, everything. What's the point? I mean, it should all now be converted to cash and go into whatever the trust or what we're creating for boys. Because obviously, I'm not going to have those family heirlooms are not going to be passed on to anyone else. And boys are obviously not interested at all. So I think that you come to a point when you have to tie up your loose ends, we have a property that we hope will get sold very soon. Anything that I can turn into money and put it into the trust is something we're doing. But what we're in the process of with the trust is looking at the trustees, and we're in conversation with them, because I think it's good to be realistic and not expect something beyond them. I'm talking about family members. I'm talking about the friend of the family who's also a parent. You know, it's so easy for everyone to become emotional. Even with our niece, it's so easy for us to become emotional. Maybe she can become very emotional. Say, yeah, I'll do this. But realistically, how much involvement do you want? How much can she give in terms of her involvement? So all of that needs to be thought out. And is there somebody else that we would like involved? So there's various things that we're looking at. We're also looking at, this is something we're just exploring, that even the national trust can be tied up with the trust, but that I have not explored enough. And I hope to do that soon. That are there some government measures that if all things fail, that they will take care? So we're looking at that now. I did attend a workshop in Kolkata regarding this, but I want to follow up and see what that can do. But this is where we are at now. But I usually, what we do as an organization, as I said, very young kids, their parents don't really want to talk about it. But I very often do. And I say that you need to think about it. Look, if things are fine, your child, with his, despite, he has autism, that's fine. He finishes education, gets a job, and can handle everything. He can handle his finance, he handle his healthcare, he can, whatever property he has, he can handle all of that. And that's fine. Whatever arrangements you can make now can be undone. You just leave it to him and he will manage. But as it is a long drawn process, as we don't know what the future may hold, think about it now. So we tell parents that, think about it now, think about money, think about savings, think about the kind of support system, and we talk about it. Like when we work with the children, you can gauge. We give it like to give what is the, looking at that particular child, what is the most support he will need in which areas, and if all things work out, what is the least amount of support? The least amount of support is finance. Least meaning not least, the least important. I mean, that is one area that covers most of the people on the spectrum. There's lots of people on the spectrum who are quite capable of going to the market. They're quite capable of going to their jobs and coming back. They're quite capable of shopping, cooking, looking after themselves. They can go out. But when it comes to handling money, they very often can't. They can't take decisions which are beneficial to them. They can be prey to being taken for a ride because they're so trusting. Here, the education level doesn't matter. So unless you figure out a way of supporting them financially, because obviously all of us want to leave our money for our kids, then your child may be in a big soup, will have a lot of trouble. So we encourage parents to think about it very early on, the network of support in terms of people and their finances, and we encourage them, we tell them. So I think a lot of parents do take steps to set this thing up, but it should be started as early as possible. One, because the amount of money you can earn at a certain age, you cannot earn that when you're over 50. So you need to think about it when you still have that earning power, and think about all the other things like property and so on, and how can you use that? Because I know a lot of people who have a number of properties, and I'm amazed that they have a house, and they're kind of hitting well into middle age, and they have teenage kids, and I'm just wondering, are they waiting for the prices to go up? What are they going to do? And they're finding it difficult to maintain. That is the problem that we do ask parents to kind of solve.
True. Thank you so much for sharing this entire story of yours, Indrani. Yes, I have been helping a lot of families with precisely this in terms of, getting the financial planning going and getting it streamlined for them in a way that they understand and they're able to take care of the entire future finances for their children. So I really appreciate, your sharing of all that you've done for Amitava and Kav over the years, and how you shared about setting up of and bringing ASWB to the level that it is today. What I'm clearly taking back is, what you stated about that they just need to be understood, accepted, and not rejected. That what you shared was so nice that they can understand that they're not being accepted. I really love your concept of yar that you shared, and also what you said that the society, if they accept our children, then there would be no need for organizations like ours. That was beautifully said. So, thank you for sharing all of this, and I hope people will really listen to your this podcast, understand your thoughts, and all the efforts that have gone in to make a better future for our children, for so many families that you have touched and you've helped, and you will be doing in the future too. Thank you so much. I really, really, genuinely appreciate you sharing all of this in such short a time.
Thank you, Chitra, for having me. It was so nice talking to you again. Thank you.
Most welcome.
You were listening to the Special Needs Children podcast with Chitra Iyer, the CEO of MFA and a trustee with the Forum for Autism. If you find this podcast relevant and interesting, it will be great if you leave a review, share, like, and subscribe. You can also let us know if there is any specific topic that you would like us to cover. Feel free to email her on chitra.iyer@myfinad.com, or you can call her on 9833785892. 85892. That is 9833785892.